Thank you. Yesterday morning, I'm staying at a college in town. I got up and I was still jet lagged. So I went down to breakfast, and as I entered the dining hall, there's this one lone soul sitting in a corner someplace. And not wanting to be ridiculous, I said, I'm not going to sit by myself. So I walk over and introduce myself and sit down. And I said, hi, my name is Roberto. And she says, hi, good morning, my name is Mona. And so we start a conversation, and I said, what brings you to Oxford? And Mona said, well, I'm attending a conference. And I said, well, you're very lucky because this is a wonderful place to attend the conference. What's the topic? And she said, eroticism. I was having cornflakes and milk. It was early. And I let it sink in, and I said, excuse me? And she said, eroticism. So I said, are there any practical sessions? And she looked at me very earnestly and said, oh, no, 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 it is entirely theoretical. Now, this is a type of conversation, breakfast conversation, you could only have at Oxford. And that's one of the reasons why I love coming back to this place. So I can assure you that what I'm going to present right now has nothing to do with erotica, at least not this time. If there's anything erotical in this, it's mere coincidence. A cigar sometimes is just a cigar, all right? So I want you to imagine a world where time is not a quantity, but rather a quality. In this world, there are no stopwatches, no clocks, no digital displays with time. In a world where time is a quality, one event just triggers another. So you're walking down the street, you recognize someone, you say hello, and you move on. You get home, you put your backpack on a table. In the morning, you get up, you go to the office, you open a door, a meeting is in progress, you attend the meeting. In a world where time is a quality, it's impossible to coordinate. It's impossible to have definite appointments. You can't measure things in days and years and hours and minutes. All you can do is mark time by the smile of a young girl's face, by a birthday wish, by a splendid sunset, or perhaps by the sound of the wind on a summer evening. I propose that in the future, or what the future wants, is a better sensibility about time. And to be more precise, a better sensibility about the different types of times, an appreciation of the different types of time. And I will bet that in the future, people will be able to navigate through the multiplicity of time. So let me explain that. About 20 years ago, this little book came out, Einstein's Dreams, written by Alan Lightman. Alan is a physicist at MIT. It was his first novel. And in this book, he has Einstein as a young man dreaming as he's preparing his theory of relativity for publication while working at the patent office in Bern. And in each one of these dreams, Einstein is depicting a world where time has a unique sense. And there are many worlds like this. So I just talked about time as a quality. But time can be something else. Time can be a visible dimension. Time can be increasing order. Time can be a sense. In fact, in this book, Lightman talks about 30 different types of time, 30 worlds. And in each one of those, time is has a different meaning. Let's go and see how others have thought of time. If you go down to Provence in Avignon and go east for about 40 kilometers, you get to a gorgeous hill town by the name of Gourd. Near Gourd is a valley, the Valley of Sananque. And if you go down into the valley, this is what you'll find, the Abbey of Sananque, Abbey du Sananque. And it's right smack in the middle of a field of lavender. It's a gorgeous place. And today is one of the leading places where you can see this type of Romanesque architecture. In the abbey, you have a community of service, a community of monks, about 20 of them or so, plus their attendants, plus guides and so forth. And you can visit. And if you stay there and wake up early one morning and attend the morning services of lauds, this is what you'll find more or less. And it's tough to find your way, it's not very well lit. And when you sit down and very calmly and very quietly look into the church, you could almost feel you're in a different space and a different time. It is time with texture, it is time with depth, it is time as timeless. And in this place, you can actually have a conversation about eternity with a straight face. Now, for a more scientific bent, let's go to West Texas. Near the town of Van Horn, in the Sierra Diablo, scientists and engineers are actually building a clock. It's a huge clock, the clock of the long now. This is the brainchild of Danny Hillis, and Hillis, as you'll remember, is a computer scientist, and he built these very, very rapid computers way back. Then he became a VP of Imagineering at Disney, transformed Disney. And he and a bunch of friends, among them Brian Eno, the musician, came up with this idea because what they wanted to do is they want to explore this notion of time in a long sense. They were concerned that the problems we're facing were multi-generational, and people in our world were just so keen on the short term that they weren't focusing on the long term. So this is a clock that would last 10,000 years. It would chime once a year, and they're actually building it in the middle of that hill. Now, you don't have to go to West Texas. If you walk down the road or drive down the road to London, to the Science Museum and Exhibition Road, you will find a prototype of the clock of the long now. It's tangible, it's real, and I'm told it's to scale. It's about 8 feet tall, maybe 4 feet wide. There's a glass case. And to me, it's a little scary. If you've seen The Lord of the Rings, it looks like the Eye of Mordor. How have other people seen time? In the Yucatan, the Maya have constructed these observatories throughout their land. They were keen observers of the sky. And through these observatories, they matched and they marked the sky with their zodiacs. This is one of the many calendars they use, and they use a whole calendric system. This one is called the Zolkin. And here you have two gears that are coming together with numbers and symbols to form or to define one specific day. This is the ritual calendar because for them, time was cyclical. Everything took place in a 52-year cycle. And this character, we found him about 30 years ago. He was working on the calendars back then, and here he's leading a group of tourists through the ruins at Koba. How do artists view time? This is the clock. It's a film by Christian Markley. And Markley is a musician, basically, who does a lot of collages with sound and turntables. But in this case, he did a film, a 24-hour film. And what he did is that to make the film, he used fragments, clips, video clips of different films for each minute. So for 5:05 in the afternoon, he needed to find a clip, a scene from a movie that depicted 5:05. Same for 5:06, 5:07, and for every minute in a 24-hour cycle. And this installation is shown in several museums. It's now going to the MoMA. It's a fantastic idea of time as fragments. And it actually works. I've seen it on YouTube. I haven't seen the actual installation. But here you see time fragmented and time coming back together again in a way that in some ways makes sense and is kind of fun. Another artist, this time the Peruvian writer Mario Vargas Llosa, has written about time. He wrote an essay, The Perpetual Orgy, in which he dissects the novels of Flaubert and talks about time in those novels. And he discovered that Flaubert is using 4 different types of time: singular time, cyclical time, immobile time, and imaginary time. And how the author blends all these times into different overlapping planes, and the characters in this novel move through these 4 planes, creating really a breathtaking journey for the reader. So we've seen how artists, monks, scientists have viewed time, but for me, I needed to make sense of all of this. It was just too much. I needed a frame. I needed a filter. So I came up with this. 30 worlds is a bit too much. Even 4 senses of time was a bit too much. I came up with 3. So I divided time into objective or physical time. That's the time we all know and love. Is the time we live in. Is the time we work in. Subjective or psychological time. That's the time when we're having a conversation with a friend, and before you know it, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Time speeds up and time slows down. Some psychologists call it working in the zone. And finally, metaphysical time or imaginary time. Those are those moments where something happens that is extraordinary, that is out of the ordinary, where something truly different happens, and you don't know exactly what it is, but if you're very, very attentive, if you're awake, you can just about catch some of these times. I was in Costa Rica last week, so I'll tell you a story to put this in perspective. And I go down there often. I have family there, I have work there. And in this particular trip, I was really stressed out because it was hectic. I had 3 days, I had a lot of things to do, places to go, people you meet, you know the story. But something happened. That morning, last Wednesday morning, we had an earthquake, 7.6 on the Richter scale. The epicenter was right over here in the Pacific, off the Gulf of Nicoya. And in the Central Valley, where San Jose is located, we didn't get the brunt of it, but we still had some very heavy shaking and tremors and the like. So as I said, I was there to do some work. I had very little time to do it. So I was totally immersed in that objective time. But that morning at 8:45, I was in an office on a 3rd floor visiting a client. And I was doing a presentation. There was only the 2 of us in a big conference room. And so I'm doing my presentation, and lo and behold, I look at him, and he turns pale and stiff, and he grabs the table, the conference table. And I said, oh my God, what did I say? Oh no, he's having a heart attack. And then I said, Gerardo, what's wrong? And he said, the earth is shaking. In my intent of being in objective time, looking at my presentation, working through my presentation, I had noticed that the chairs in the room were moving. The chairs, like yours on casters, they were moving. And the window panes were rattling. And I had to hold a bookcase that's about to fall on my head. If you've never been in a earthquake of this magnitude, it's like being on a fast-moving train that's about to derail. That's what it feels like. So we quickly left the room. Now, this took about 40 seconds, 45 seconds. But in my mind's eye, it was like an hour. Because you see, I was in psychological time. That night, I went home, and I got a phone call. And the phone call was from my toughest client. This is a businessman trained as an attorney, tough as nails. He happens to be my brother. And you all know what it's like to work with family. So I said, how was your day? How was the earthquake? And he said, well, I had a very interesting day. Let me tell you about it. I said, okay. So you know that situation we're having at the seaport where we have so much congestion and the repairs and now the earthquake? And I said, yeah, I know you've been terribly worried about it. He's in the shipping business. He says, I have a ship out in the harbor. It's the 4th on queue, and at this rate, it's going to take 5 or 6 days for it to be docked with all the attending costs, the customer complaints, the claims, etc. And I said, so what happened? I guess with the earthquake, it must have been a mess. Well, let me tell you what happened. He said the first ship in the rotation on queue was a cistern that carried fuel. And according to maritime law and protocol, when there's an earthquake or a catastrophe, the ship has to wait 24 hours before it can dock. So it was taken out of rotation and out of the queue. And I said, what a lucky break. He said, oh, wait, doesn't stop there. The second ship was a grain ship. And I said, well, the grain ship doesn't have flammables. He says, no, but there's a huge scale on the east side of the port. And that scale is used to weigh the grain so they can work the ship. So, well, the earthquake damaged the scale. Therefore, they couldn't work the ship. Therefore, it got taken out of rotation. I know where this is going. So I said, what happened to the third ship? It sank. No, it didn't sink. The third ship is a car carrier. But in order to work a car carrier, they need these appendices called spiders. And these spiders were sitting by 2 empty containers that fell. So now that's a mess. It's going to take 2 or 3 days. So that means, yes, that means that my ship is first on queue, is docking in half an hour. It's a miracle. It's a blasted miracle. Now, he didn't use the word blasted, but he did say miracle. Because you see, we have stepped into metaphysical time. Because miracles, small or large, only happen in metaphysical time. So, with the aid of very sophisticated computer graphics, I drafted this timeline, and that's my life, your life, our lives in objective time. A big hello at the beginning, an even bigger goodbye at the end, education, partnering, working, and retiring. It's not that dull. It can be joyful. It can be purposeful. I'm not saying it's not. All I'm saying, it's one-dimensional. As opposed to what? As opposed to a multiplicity of time where you have subjective time and metaphysical time, some hellos, some goodbyes, time speeds up, slows down, like I am doing now because of time, and you have metaphysical time. I don't know what happens in metaphysical time. All I know is that something magical takes place. So we have a choice, and this choice is going to be more stark in the future. We can live in objective time, or we can live in the multiplicity of time. And this is important because in the future, my bet, what I believe is going to happen, is that in these schools for time, and that's what they look like, kids will be taught how to manage time in objective time, how to play in psychological time, and how to dream in mythical time. Their lives will be richer, they will be more fulfilled, they will become time travelers, not because they will be able to go to the future or to the past, but because they will be able to navigate through the multiplicity of time. And finally, I know this is a heady topic, and I wish that we could spend more time, but you see, I really can't because I've run out of time. Thank you.